This is
Published by Inner Traditions, Mark Stavish's Egregores is dedicated to those seeking self-awakening. Stressing that understanding Egregores is life-changing, the book aims to bring clarity and open new horizons to both solo and group practitioners. So after listening the audible version twice and finally having the paperback, I'll summarize some favorite parts. Before that, consider subscribing to the channel and my newsletter if you find the content valuable and entertaining. Also check my books such as my Gumroad and Etsy pages as they may offer helpful products. What is an egregore? The word egregore is Greek in origin and is derived from egregorus, meaning wakeful or watcher. The author explains that the term was first encountered in the Book of Enoch regarding an angelic being. Adopted by various mystics and practitioners, this book's central theme is that 200 fallen angels interbred with human women, creating a race of giants called Nephilim, and that eventually brought a battle between good and evil. Based on Stavish's research, Victor Hugo was the first to use the word egregore in modern language. A bit later, the term was used by Eliphas Levi, who recognized egregores as the fathers of Nephilim. Egregore's most common definition comes from Wiktionary.org, and as found on page 3, according to this, an egregore is, quote, occult autonomous psychic entity composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people, unquote. While technically correct, Stavish views this definition as somewhat incomplete. He also remarks there's another more significant and scarier one. Page 3, quote, a home or conduit for specific psychic intelligence of a non-human nature connecting the invisible dimensions with the material world in which we live, unquote. Collective entities. Recognizing the second definition as more accurate and thorough, the author defines egregores as the true power source of all magical and religious groups. Considering the works of the Polish occultist Moni Sadu, Stavish explains that an egregore is before all else a collective entity. Besides states and nations, this includes religious and magical groups such as sects. Egregores can also occur based on areas, cultures, subcultures, and virtually anything involving groups of people believing the same things. Hence, why they are also referred to as group minds. And though not limitless, egregore's power can exceed political and spiritual groups. Providing an excerpt from a private translation of the French Martinist and esoteric Freemason Robert Abmelane's Practical Kabbalah, on page 50, the book notes that an egregore is, quote, a force generated by powerful spiritual currents and later fed at regular intervals, conforming to a rhythm of harmony with the universal life of the cosmos or to a meeting of entities united by a common characteristic, unquote. Across the globe. The term egregore is unique to the West, but the ideas it conveys aren't. They are so widespread the author sees them as the basis for all spiritual and magical practices across the globe. He also notes some of the most potent religious egregores today include Islam and Buddhism. Tulkus and Tulpas. Diving into Tibetan Buddhism, elsewhere the author addresses the concept of Tulkus and Tulpas. Being animated thought forms, taking an autonomous existence, Tulpas and Tulkus were introduced to the West by the legendary Alexander David-Neel. In her Magic and Mystery in Tibet, David-Neel reveals that Tulpas are primarily ephemeral creations, possibly taking different forms, including man, animal, tree, rock, etc. As such, Tulpas coexist with their creator and can even survive him or her and gain certain independence. Tulkus are incarnations of lasting energy, directed by an individual with the object of continuing a given kind of activity after his death. Structure and bodies of egregores. Like actual humans, egregores have physical, mental, and astral bodies. Physically, they are contained by the bodies of those participating in a particular group. Mentally and astrally, they are the sum total of those individuals, and as mentioned on page 6, quote, the egregore exists at both ends of the spectrum, as well as across it, from the dense material world to the subtle and intangible psychic domain, unquote. Page 28 adds that an egregore consists of collective emotions and the thought form itself is amoral, taking its directions from those connected to it. Hence, it can be perceived as a composite thought form charged with energy. Origins of Western egregores. Based on Stavish's research, the only other author recognizing egregore's importance in modern times is Jocelyn Godwin. In his book The Golden Thread, Godwin traces Western egregore's origins to the semi-animistic beliefs of the ancient Romans and Greeks, such as how ancient cult practices impacted daily life and foreign affairs. And back then, the gods predetermined the individual's life, which lasted no more than 35 years. It is crucial to understand that an egregore is augmented and sustained by human beliefs and various rituals. If nourished enough, these entities can take life on their own. In such cases, they have limited power based on their devotees, but an endless appetite for further devotion. Stavish and Godwin agree that immortal gods and goddesses, angels and demons are basically egregores. Also, that different nations' rise and fall has much to do with their relations with their deities. Using an excerpt from Jean Dubuis, the founder of Philosophers of Nature, Stavish agrees that true initiation is liberation. Your higher self cannot free you unless you do that yourself in the realms accessible to you, and this liberation begins with understanding egregores and freeing yourself from those not essential. Page 23. Quote, "For some the notion of an egregore concerns itself less with being influenced by an angelic or demonic being, and more with being under an influence of once human and now fully perfected beings or masters. These once human masters, said to be adepts of the occult arts and sciences, having now achieved the highest levels of spiritual illumination, guided humanity along the path of return." Unquote. After explaining that labels like being a fully contacted school and having inner contacts played a huge role in making the Golden Dawn so attractive to join, Stavish reveals that the so-called unknown superiors and invisible masters are much identical to the righteous men of Kabbalah, the bodhisattvas of the Buddhism, and the saints of Christianity. Ubiquitous to all traditions, these are remarked as beyond sect and creed. Page 24. Quote, "Unlike some esoteric schools that advocated a complete dissolution of the personality of the sense of self, these adepts realized the balance between individuality and enlightened awareness and existed as self-perfected autonomous beings." Unquote. Now, this has some caveats. Though perfected, such beings, the author explains, only sometimes possess the ability to act on the physical world. Often, they need an intermediary, and this implies that 1. They can be contacted directly, and 2. They may be part of an egregore or look for ways to create one as a tool for acting on this world. Segments of this section remind me of the Cicero saying that particular order secret chiefs could be easily adepts who reach the supernal triads grades, and based on my research, these ranks are pretty impossible to obtain with a physical body. The essence of the Golden Dawn Egregore. The same chapter remarks that the whole essence of the Golden Dawn Egregore can be summed up in a paper called Flying Crow. Intended for adepts of the grade of 5 = 6 or higher, such reports were written by MacGregor Matters, and Stavish notes that the order's entire basis is what's called the etheric link. One is first introduced to the link by joining the order as a neophyte. This expands the aura, increasing its density. Then the connection is established in the elemental grades, and for this to happen, one must engage in ritual and meditation, constantly fostering the power flow through the link and preventing the aura from sealing off. Having its culmination at 7 = 4, the etheric link can be viewed as an astral tunnel with access to various regions, and the more of these humans can access, the greater their chances of accomplishing the great work. Beyond magical circles. Further examining Jean Dubuis' perspectives, Chapter 4 reveals joining egregores may have negative consequences, working as a trap and not liberation. Therefore, a solo path seems much more healthy and productive, as it minimizes external influences and lets you stay in control. Comment. In a 1998 interview, Dubuis shares with Stavish that true initiation doesn't need the middleman, but only happens when you acquire inner freedom. Quote, "I think that the main problem stands that in the real initiatic path, you must have no priest, no master or guru, because the real initiation means that when you present yourself at the door of the temple, you are a free being. Freedom is the first thing you must acquire in order to be initiated. The inner freedom, of course." Unquote. The author offers Dion Fortune's advice to those eager to join any group or organization. According to Fortune, the best way of judging any organization's spiritual health isn't by taking its public statements as a proof of its integrity, but rather looking closely at the type of person its discipline produces. And to make your life easier, Stavish offers a proverb from the Bible: "Ye shall know them by their fruits." Comment. This transcends magic and can bring quality to self-improvers and others. In my humble opinion, basic examples include not taking fitness advice from people who are out of shape, nor doing as broke people if you want financial freedom. Stavish emphasizes how detrimental joining a group can be, especially for individualists, and the reason is that this often leads to reducing one's ability of independent thinking. Quote, It is increasingly apparent to those outside the group that any member of it is being influenced to some degree by the pressure of the collective thinking of all linked with it, and unless care is taken, the power of independent thought may be reduced. For many people, this is something they actually seek. They may feel inadequate in the everyday world and feel that by being linked in this way, they are protected from what they see as aggressive tendencies from other people. Or again, they may feel inadequate to deal with new ideas and situations and feel that the group mind will do their thinking for them and they will not be in danger of wrong thinking. Unquote. Comment. Stavish agrees with Butler that proper discipline is making conscious and deliberate choices about who and what to follow and accept as a teacher, and based on modern science, you better make those independent from willpower non-negotiables. The exact section reminds me of an extremely close person who was a co-mason but eventually quit due to similar reasons, and also of what Napoleon Hill defines as drifters such as of the late Christopher Hart's take on joining lodges and society in general. The law of attraction. Quote, the fundamental premise of psychotherapy, psychospiritual practices, hypnosis, and legion of government-funded mind control experiments is that what we are exposed to often enough, we become sympathetic toward. What we focus on, we become. Unquote. As the author notes in podcasts, focusing on the wrong things attracts them to you and also feeds their egregore. On the contrary, by focusing on the beneficial, life-affirming, and productive stuff, you favor yourself and the race as a whole. Destroying Egregores, page 103. Quote, to remove oneself from the influence of an egregore, particularly a religious, esoteric, or even political one, the objects connected with the organization or movement must be destroyed. Fire is the principal means of separating the energetic link and destroying it. This separation and destruction is on personal level, but can also be extended to the larger group as well. Unquote. Explaining why occupying armies destroy symbols and monuments, Stavish notes that while those egregores' spiritual intelligence will persist for an extended period, without devotees and physical anchors to sustain it, they cannot influence the material world. In my humble opinion, one can also achieve such aims on an individual level by following Dr. Christopher Hart's methods for radical undoing and particularly actively rejecting the programming of their environment, whatever that is. The Mastermind. Including a quote from Tim Gowrich, Stavish explains that what Hill defined as a mastermind is no different from what William Burroughs and Brian Gysin called the third mind, and while Hill viewed that phenomena as essential to success, the same didn't lead Burroughs to anything good. Freeing yourself from an egregore. Even that joining specific egregores can be beneficial, often this isn't the case. Luckily, freeing yourself from an egregore is not just possible, but actually quite doable as long as you're responsible for your life. Egregores have no influence for as long as human beings can be avoided, and the first important is doing inner reflection to clarify what you want. The keyword is concern. Emotions and thoughts are food for egregores. You essentially disconnect and free yourself from an egregore by not feeding it. On the other side, merely not being exposed to the group and its activity isn't enough. Quote, one should not expect to extract oneself from the psychic influences of an egregore simply because physical contact with it ceased and memories associated with it have been removed. A plan, purpose and meaning for life is needed to fill the psychic and physical gaps that are left. Unquote. Plus, removing yourself from an egregore and its physical representatives can have side effects similar to when quitting an addiction, changing a career, or even dealing with death. So, it is crucial to be the architect of your future, having crystal clarity of how exactly your new life will proceed. Nature abhors vacuum, so you better know how to fill the emptiness, unless you wanted to do that for yourself using the dominating influences. Page 96. Quote, only by having a clear understanding of what we desire to accomplish can we know if the groups we associate with will help or hinder us in our journey. Knowing what it is being promised and what is really being delivered is a way to keep us moving toward our goals, and away from those who would use or abuse us in pursuit of their own. Unquote. And to achieve such understanding, you need to remember the maxim written over the Apollo temple at Delphi, know thyself. Breaking free from an egregore requires eliminating any contact or connection to its members, rituals, activities, etc. Business organizations would have a substantially weaker grasp than religious ones, and for occultists, This includes separating themselves from the dominating religious movement. Mass media. Though still powerful, these days organized religion, at least in many places, at least in my humble opinion, may not be the biggest threat. What is ubiquitous is mass media and the various cultures and movements marketing particular stereotypes and ideals. And as noted on page 98, quote, whether it is Star Wars and people identifying themselves as Jedi or Sith in the religion category of any given census, or those individuals who follow musical bands or personalities, the purpose of media on its most fundamental level is to create an egregore. Common characteristics and values can be used to create temporary or transient collective minds or egregores. Unquote. This isn't limited to the dominating religion or initiatic organization, including culture and societal programming. And in the case of religion, the key is not disrespectfully rejecting its totality, but acknowledging its beneficial and positive aspects if there were any. Breaking the egregore's hold. To break the egregore's hold, the author explains, we must utilize therapeutic blasphemy. This is a deliberate desacralization of the dominant religious themes, compensating against their powerful yet very unconscious presence. Practical application. Besides knowing thyself, the author recommends 4 practical tools to combat the influence of egregores. Being a ritual partially resembling Regardi's version of the Rose Cross, the first can be used for general purification. Being lifestyle changes, the other tier include avoiding distractions like television, radio and video games, or said differently, taking control of your informational diet. Stavish recommends limiting exposure to those and doing so consciously, and apparently this helps you control dopamine. Complementing the former, the third is filling your mind only with defined forms and images that serve best your new goals, purpose and vision for the future. Besides keeping you in control, this one also minimizes outer influences. Being a gym rat, I really like that the author emphasizes the importance of keeping a healthy body and exercise regimen. He notes that the physical world is of action and combining word and deed achieves the desired outcome, which is the essence of magic. As my readers know, this also teaches you to train yourself to substitute instant gratification for long-term fulfillment, as progressing with fitness, for instance, requires first doing the work and later getting the results. Secret chiefs. Just because the spirits want someone in charge does not mean that you are obliged to listen to them. Remember, you are in charge of your spiritual path, not spirits, not chiefs, and not imperators. Unquote. Sharing disturbing stories resembling scary documentaries on sects, at its end, the book gives examples of people leaving orders and getting their freedom back. Moreover, the author opens up about the watch whose members started dying brutally, and this kinda resonates with some of what that former corpsman I mentioned shared with me. These aren't included to scare, but to inspire you that everything is possible if you're willing to do the work and take control. Also to help you understand that the secret chiefs of an order can not only be spirits, but also figments of someone's imagination and subconscious, and that person can be pretty loony. Whatever the case, the author advises taking extreme ownership and removing yourself from the situation if needed. The key is to always remember you're responsible for your spiritual advancement, health and well-being, and never, ever give that away. Final words. Combining unprecedented research with high-quality writing, Mark Stavish's Egregores introduces something crucial for occultists and people in general, emphasizing that understanding them is the basis for not letting egregores influence you. It empowers you to take control and make informed decisions. Also, to create your own destiny and spiritual path using common sense and the well of knowledge the author packs in such a tiny format. I can compare Stavish's research to mainly Palmer Hall's, and I consider the book a modern occult classic, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what yours is and how I did with this review. Otherwise, like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more content like this, check my other works and books, especially the digital products I make on Etsy and Gumroad, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for your time.